The Nashville Predators go from a 5-game losing streak to a 3-game win streak. What's been the difference? We're going to talk about that and the emotional return of Steven Stamkos to Tampa Bay tonight against the Lightning. We'll cover it all on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this week and this Monday episode welcoming any first-time listeners, and of course giving that shout out to our everydayers and to our Locked On Predators insiders. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you, and we love spending a bit of the day together. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
The Predators, Emma, are coming off of a 4-point back-to-back weekend. Emma and I are going to tell you what has improved with this team. We're also going to share a little John Cougar Mellencamp quote from Andrew Brunette you won't be able to unhear. Also, later in the show, we are going to talk about the big night tonight. Of course, Steven Stamkos returning to Tampa Bay. We're going to talk with NHL Network's Diandra Loux about the return of Stammer and how the Bolts are faring without him. Before we dive into all of that, we want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Emma, it feels a little nice to come on here and get to talk about 4 points from the weekend. Predators came away with a 3-2 win over Chicago, and they got a 4-3 overtime win over the Columbus Blue Jackets. When you look back on this weekend, where are you at game 8 into the season?
You know, it hasn't really changed anything for me because my constant messaging from the very beginning was this is a team that is still trying to figure it out. And this weekend, you saw very much a team that is figuring it out. And neither of the wins over Chicago or Columbus were pretty. But you have to win ugly sometimes. And I think that was good. It was both games. They started down 2-0 and were able to come back and win. And so, and it wasn't, Jonathan Marchessault's overtime goal was pretty good against Columbus, but like most of them, they weren't these crazy highlight reel plays. It's like we've been saying, you just got to get dirty and get ugly sometimes. And they were able to do that. So I think it was good for them to get the wins, but good for them to get these kinds of wins where, it kind of speaks a lot to the character of the group. One thing that we heard from, I think, every single person we talked to after the Columbus game was the word resilience and resiliency, that they were able to kind of battle back and show that together as a group. And I think that for a team ends up making you stronger.
I'll be honest, with what we saw from this team in the first 5 losses and from just the things we heard in the locker room last week, Jonathan Marchessault used the word fragile to describe the Nashville Predators locker room and the team. A little bit nerve-wracking to see them go down 2 goals because you think, is this a team that has not just the skill set, because we know they have the skill set, but do they sort of have that mental fortitude to be able to battle back when you are down 2-0 in these 2 games? I have to say, when they were down 2-0, I didn't know if this team had it in them to battle back yet, but they did. And I agree with you. I think, you went from a fragile team to a team that's now talking about resiliency. I think we're a step in the right direction. I would not say 60 minutes of great hockey in either game. I would not say that was our best 60, friends.
No, would not say that either.
No.
But again, that's kind of what I was getting at when I said not pretty. Wasn't always pretty, but you got to find a way. And they found a way to come away with 4 points this weekend, which quite frankly, and we talked about this before the show, that I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting personally 2, maybe 3 points out
Yeah.
of this weekend. But they got 4. So it's
Yeah.
good.
And I do think that 4th overtime point mattered,
Oh yeah.
for the team morale. Obviously, in standings at this point, it's still early, but when you start the season with no points 5 games in, you got to battle for every point. So to see especially Jonathan Marchessault get that overtime goal was great. I loved what he had to say afterward, and I think this speaks to who Jonathan Marchessault is as a person. And we've kind of talked about this. He is a straight shooter.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
he's
He's my kind of people.
he is like, he just tells you the things. He's not interested in hockey talk. He tells you the
Nope.
things. And I thought it was great. He was talking about, I've come in and I don't feel like I've been able to contribute yet. Like, it's new system, new teammates, and all of that. And you could tell that that bothered him. And so for him to be the one to get that overtime goal, I think was great. I also loved that he said, if I don't contribute and the team wins, I can live with that. If the team loses and I haven't contributed, I have a problem. And I
Yeah.
was like, I love that. Like, he is here to win. What else stood out to you about the weekend and the games, Emma?
I think, well, this is more so for the Chicago game in particular, because the Columbus game, those refs weren't calling anything, it seemed like, on either side. But Chicago, they were calling everything. The penalty kill, the Predators penalty kill has looked so good. I believe as of time of recording, they are second in the league right now. And I mean, they've looked incredible. Now, you would like them to not be in the box as much, but I mean, I think that they have, they really play a lot of times. What we've seen from the team at 5-on-5 is they sort of lack urgency a little bit, at least from what it appears. And that penalty kill plays with so much urgency. And I like that there's been there's been like a little personnel switch up. We saw, now moving to the Columbus game, we saw Gus Nyquist on the penalty kill. And I was like, wait a minute, why is 14 out there? It's so funny to think, because he was obviously moved off of the top power play unit with the new arrivals this offseason. And now he's out there playing on the penalty kill, which he rarely, if ever, did last season. It was huge because, it allows you to add a little bit of that scoring power. I've seen now and I can't remember, it was earlier in the season or maybe even in the preseason. I remember talking to Alex Carrier about the penalty kill in particular and about what's different. Obviously now Dan Heinold has moved on, and he used to run the penalty kill for the Predators. And it's, you're kind of relearning a new system if you are one of the killers. And so I asked him, and he said, yeah, it's very different. It's very, very different. Now, we are not just guarding our space and kind of standing in front of the net. And seems like previously the PK was more reactionary, and now it's more proactive. And I think you're seeing that because they're creating turnovers, they're hounding pucks, and they're trying to get the puck. They're not just standing back and guarding the net, it seems like.
Yeah. Got a chance to talk with Jeremy Lauzon about the penalty kill too. And I was like, hey, just talk to me in layman's terms, explain the difference. Because again, like you said, this is a brand new penalty kill system for this team. And, he talked about it's more aggressive, which I think you can tell just by looking. It's a lot more skating. You can tell, eye test. But he was talking about, previously you almost tried to funnel the puck where you wanted it to go. Here, there are no trigger points. We are after the puck, and the goal is to anticipate a pass, cause a fumbled puck, and get it out of the zone. And you are seeing them be so successful at something that is a lot of skating, very aggressive. And you think, okay, let's carry that momentum, that energy, that intensity into some 5-on-5 play, and let's just see what happens. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
But
let's try it.
Looked fantastic. Coming up, we're going to talk about a couple of other takeaways from this weekend, including some new line combinations. And friends, we got to talk about these goaltenders. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It's not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the PrizePicks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineup stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return with PrizePicks, your picks are still alive. Philip Forsberg, of course, has been heating up for the Nashville Predators with goals in these back-to-back games. Why not pick more on Forsberg's projections this week? So download the PrizePicks app today, and you can use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So check out all the action at PrizePicks. Run your game. Emma, we saw some changes between the Chicago game and the Columbus game. And it's something that you and I have kind of talked about. Like, at what point does Andrew Brunette touch the untouchable top line? And he hit that point in the Columbus game. Now, we've seen him switch it up in game. Did not go well early. But this time he made some changes ahead of puck drop. He had Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Marchessault together, then Stamkos, Novak, and Nyquist together. Jankowski was with Sissons and Evangelista, and then we had the fourth line with Loux, McCarron, and Smith. What did you think of the forward line changes in that Columbus game? Do you feel like it made a big difference? Do you think that Bruno has landed on something, or are we still searching?
It's hard to say after one game. I don't think after watching one game with the new lines that I can definitively say, yes, that's it, or no, that's not it. What I will say is that the line that for me was most noticeable, particularly in the Columbus game on Saturday, was the fourth line. It was that identity line. And Zach Loux, it seems like, is what they needed. Not saying that, oh my gosh, Zach Loux comes up and boom, they're on a 3-game heater. It's not,
it may not correlate exactly.
Correlation, causation, we can debate that. But I think that he's been out there. He's been just throwing hits. He is so much. And I know you've said this a lot, that he is the closest kind of one-to-one replacement for Kiefer Sherwood. And I think that he has fit in on that line so well. And I think that, and we did see Zach Loux get his first NHL point. Yes. He had an assist on Alex Carrier's goal against Columbus. He did get to take home the puck for that. So that was exciting. But yeah, I think that line has really been, kind of out there causing chaos and being kind of that identity of what Brunette talks about with being hard to play against. So I really like that. And I know that was the one line that didn't change for the Columbus game. Yes. I did like the addition of Marchessault specifically on the top line. I have just thought that he, and it's kind of like what you talked about before. Obviously, it was different. He scored the overtime goal. It was 3-on-3, but I think that he has that scoring punch, and I really like the idea of him with Forsberg and O'Reilly. I think that's a really kind of dynamic combination. And so I was happy to see that. And I thought they looked good. I do think that we could probably see some more changes, but like you said, I'm glad that Brunette seems to have moved on from let's just make all these wholesale changes in game. It's no, let's not do that.
Yeah, this was good to see on the front end of the puck drop. Yes. and kind of see how that goes. I do like Marchessault on the top line. With a Halloween theme, let me use this analogy. if Andrew Brunette were a mad scientist and he was in a lab creating a hockey monster, his Frankenstein would look a lot like Jonathan Marchessault.
That's
Just
true.
very physical, puck hunter, scoring touch, good offensive sense. And so I like that, kind of mixing it up, because I don't know that we've seen from the top line what we expected to see from them. And to make the changes not in game, I think gives this team a chance. Another change that we saw on defense, we saw Dante Fabro return to the lineup. We saw Mark Del Gaizo as a healthy scratch. Now, friends, you all know we are locked on Mark Del Gaizo here. But I do think it was important to get Fabro back in the lineup, because this is a good player who needs to be playing in games. And Emma, this circles back to your Big Friday feeling from Friday's episode, where you say, hey, let's get Fabro and Del Gaizo in, and maybe Luke Schenn sits a game. I don't know that we're going to see that happen, but I think you make a fair argument. You hate to have Del Gaizo and Fabro missing games as healthy scratches.
Yes. I was like, oh, Bruno, you're halfway there. Halfway.
So close.
You got Fabro in. But again, I think, I understand, and we've talked about this, like it seemed kind of a natural assumption. Oh, you're paying Brady Shea $7 million a year. You put him on that top pairing with Roman Josi. And we saw that it looked fine. I don't think that they were quite the, superpower of a defensive pairing that we expected. So at that point, okay, if you want to get Josi back on his natural side and then you put Fabro back with him, that's a really good pairing. We know it still ends up with Brady Shea buried down on that third line with Luke Schenn. And I'm sorry, but when you're playing on a defensive pairing with Luke Schenn, you have to do the job of two defensemen in this system. In this system, Luke Schenn is not it. It's not that Del Gaizo was the problem. It was like, we need to find a way to get Fabro back in here. And that's how they decided to do it.
Yeah. Do want to talk about two players who were big for Nashville when it comes to getting these 4 points, and that is the goaltenders. UC Saros got the start against Chicago. I actually was surprised. I thought they would start Wedgwood, but hey, whatever works. And it worked. Saros, 27 of 29 saves, really put in some tough situations early, came up with some big saves late. We saw kind of that game stealing UC Saros when the Predators were struggling at times in that game. But let's talk about Saturday night's performance by Scott Wedgwood. And let's just be real, Emma. Not sure the Nashville Predators fans are on the wedgie train.
They weren't until Saturday.
But man, Scott Wedgwood came out and showed people why Barry Trotz was like, if Kevin Lankinen isn't here, that's our guy. Scott Wedgwood really had a great game. And again, it comes down to you've got to have somebody who's going to make the big saves in the big moments. And that's what Wedgwood was able to do.
He was. Yeah. I think it was, again, with all of these players, and I've said this many times before, but it doesn't matter what position you play. You need to give them a minute to, you got to find the catch up in Brunette's system. It affects the goalies too, because it affects how you're seeing the game being played in front of you. And you have to know what to anticipate and when to anticipate. And people were just so quick to write off Wedgwood because he didn't look good in the preseason. He lost in the opener against Dallas. But again, I'm like, okay, yes, he looked bad in the preseason, but you know what? It's preseason. I don't really put stock in any of that. Game against Dallas, that's the Dallas freaking Stars. That's a really good hockey team over there. He came up clutch in some really big moments for the Predators. And hopefully, because again, just like the rest of this team, I was like, he's figuring it out. He'll get there, but you got to give him a minute. And we saw that for sure. And like I said, I talked to Ben Vanderklok, the goaltending coach, about this, and he told me, point blank, Wedgwood was our first choice. Like once we knew Lankinen wasn't coming back, we we knew we wanted that guy. And that says a lot for a team and a staff that's, kind of known for pumping out these really dynamic goaltenders.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And I thought he definitely earned the respect of the fans in Bridgestone Arena by the end of that game, which was great to see. Do want to wrap up the conversation about these two games with a quote from Andrew Brunette that, I'm not going to lie, Emma, had me feeling a little uncomfortable.
And I remember I sent you the audio and you responded to me and you're like, did I just hear that right? I said, you sure did.
I did. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm going to need to know. Did I hear this right? So these two games, not 120 minutes of excellent hockey. There were ebbs and flows in this game and some things that were frustrating to Andrew Brunette. But the phrase that he used, and I don't know if he meant to quote John Cougar Mellencamp or not, but he did. He said this was kind of the games that hurts so good. Come on, baby, now. He didn't say that part, but he referred to it as hurts so good. I don't even know what to do with that, Emma. It just made me feel a little uncomfortable and made me laugh.
I think where he was, I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but I feel like what he was going for was kind of talking about how you got to go through like the really tough times for the good stuff to feel really good. And so it was all like, again, to do another like cringy quote, isn't it like Batman or something? It's always darkest just before the dawn. Like that's kind of what
That's what he
I
was going for.
think he was going for. It's like you gotta go through the pain and the rough times to really appreciate the good times. But yeah, he opted for hurts so good.
Hurts
And
so good. Yeah.
uh-huh.
It was a throwback for me to riding the bus to high school with the Ransom Boys and their boombox in the back of the bus with that was in circulation with like the Jay Giles band Centerfold.
Oh
So
yeah.
just a moment of like a little uncomfortable. But yeah, hurts so good. The Predators, 4 points over the weekend. They have got to turn the page. Big night. I think a lot of eyes in the NHL are going to be on the Nashville Predators tonight, and especially Steven Stamkos. He is returning to Tampa Bay. Coming up, we are going to talk with Diandra Loux. She is a correspondent for the NHL Network. We're going to talk to her about the return of Steven Stamkos to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I'm joined now by Diandra Loux. She is the NHL Network correspondent covering the Tampa Bay Lightning and a big game coming up tonight. Diandra, I will be honest with you. I am feeling a little bit emotional about this game as a Nashville Predators fan, somebody who covers this team on this end. What is the vibe like in Tampa Bay with the fans and kind of with the team with the return of Steven Stamkos?
Yeah, well, I always, I was kind of wondering what other, or maybe even just the Nashville side, like how they viewed this. Obviously, in Tampa, I would say the past few days, it's what a lot of people have been talking about. And I think this date in particular, we've had it circled, I would say, since Stamkos signed with Nashville. That day, I think within the hour, I went and looked up, when is Nashville playing Tampa, So obviously it's going to be a really big night, but the one thing that I've been thinking about, even just since July, I sat down with Stamkos right before they went for the playoffs, actually, but right before game 1. And I was asking him just a bunch of questions because he had a 40-goal season. And I wanted to know, what that was like for him personally. And I think if I remember correctly, he actually scored a hat trick too, like the game before I was talking to him. And he just wanted to talk about the fans. Like, honestly, when I started talking about the fans in Tampa, his whole face lit up. And so I think that's probably what I'm going to be watching tomorrow night, is just his interaction with the fans and the way that they give him a tribute. Like, they are fully rooting for him tomorrow night. And that's just kind of what I've been thinking about, is I think he just took a lot of pride in the fact that he grew up here with the fans. And I don't think I know that he did. And so that's kind of where my mind is really not on the hockey stuff. It's going to be more on that aspect of it.
A lot of eyes in the NHL are going to be on this game. When it comes to Steven Stamkos returning, what do you expect the reception to look like?
I mean, I don't even know if I have words for, I mean, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be huge already. Even just when I'm walking to games, I see there's so many Stamkos jerseys. So like everyone's still wearing their Stamkos jerseys. Maybe in some hopes that he's going to come back one day. I don't know, but
there are a lot of them in Nashville too. Every game,
really?
By the way, a lot of Tampa Bay Lightning 91 jerseys. Yeah.
Tampa and Nashville has always been really interesting to me because both cities, there's just so much crossover. There's a lot of people that have moved either from Nashville to Tampa or Tampa to Nashville. And I think it's just like similar vibes, which, I actually remember Stamkos was talking about that when he chose Nashville. It's just like kind of similar vibes, laid back, type of environment. So that kind of makes sense that people probably move back and forth. But yeah, overall, I think, the fans love Stamkos. I can't even really put into words, but I'm sure the round of applause when he goes on the ice is going to be insane. And if he does score a goal at Amalie Arena tomorrow night, it's going to be very loud in there, and office hours will be open. So
love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Predators fans would be so excited to see that, would be cheering along. Having covered Steven Stamkos for as long as you have, what do you think this is going to be like for him? How is he going to handle this? Not, necessarily emotionally, but the fact that this is maybe one of the biggest games for him, not maybe as far as outcome of the game, but just environment and the situation. What does that do for somebody like Stamkos? How does that change maybe the way he plays or looks at this game, or does it not change it at all?
I don't know. I feel like if you asked him, maybe he would probably say it's not going to change the way that he plays. Maybe he's very even keel guy, very level headed. Stamkos doesn't get too high and doesn't get too low. He just kind of stays pretty even. So I'm sure it'll be emotional for him going, walking into Amalie. They've had the same like security guards and elevator attendants, and everybody has just been there for so long, and it's a very homey vibe there. And Tampa in general is just very homey. So I think it's going to be more about that, is like seeing these faces. And then it's going to be very weird to see him in the visitor locker room. Like, I'm not even going to lie. I don't even know what that looks like, So I think for him, it's probably, maybe he'll be comfortable in it, and it'll help Nashville out because he's going to score. He's going to be back in Tampa and in his comfy spot at Amalie, and maybe he'll score on the power play. But other than that, I think it'll be emotional for him. It will. But he's such a professional that he's just going to play his game, I'm sure. And when the tribute video plays, I just remember other players when that happened, like Alex Killorn, when he came back, he was really emotional. Ryan McDonough was really emotional. So I'm sure Stammer's a pretty even keel guy, but I'm sure it will be emotional for him.
Yeah. So here in Nashville, a lot of people have talked about, he's really been kind of off to this slow start. He has 1 goal in 8 games. Having watched him play, what are some things that you think the Predators need to do to help him get going? And are you concerned when you look at Stamkos' stats here in Nashville?
I'm so glad that you asked that, actually, because I have seen a lot of people giving him flack or putting all of this pressure on Stamkos. Like, he's supposed to carry this offense to a Stanley Cup. And Tampa is a different team than Nashville. It's a totally different situation with different players. Every team is different, but he was in the same situation for 16 years. That's a very long time. And he's used to playing with the same guys. Like, he's just playing with Kucherov and Braden Point and Victor Hedman, So I think everybody in Tampa has been checking his stats and like kind of checking just to see how he's doing. I don't really get to watch a ton of Predators games, but I think that Nashville's going to have to make some adjustments if they want him to play the game that he played in Tampa, because you can't just like plug him in there and assume that it's going to work. If you watch some of the videos of the passing that went on between Kucherov and Stamkos on the power play, or even Hedman, and how quickly it happens, how fast it happens, that's not happening in Nashville. And so they're going to have to make some adjustments if they want him to do the same thing that he did in Tampa. I actually talked to him about like his passes from Kucherov, and because they're so fast, you don't even see them happen. And that's kind of what he's used to, but he said he could do it in his sleep. So I think it's just going to take time and for him to kind of build his game and find his identity there. But no, I'm not worried. Like once they kind of figure out their groove and they make adjustments, I think that they'll be off to the races.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that too, just so you know.
Yeah.
We've been preaching the same thing. Give this time. Give it time.
Yeah, you got to give him time. Like, I mean, granted, Stamkos is closer to the end of his career than he is to the beginning, obviously. But like, he had a 40-goal season last year. Like, he's not just he didn't just forget how to play hockey. You know what I mean?
Right.
So adjustments are going to have to be made, and I think that it'll come down to coaching and the players and how they figure that out. But once they do get it right, like, and he's comfortable, his shot is forever.
Yes. We have one of our announcers is a retired goaltender, and he played for Nashville, and he stepped in one of the practices, and we got a chance to talk to him, and he was talking about anticipating passes. And he said, here's the thing with Steven Stamkos, you can anticipate and know that shot's coming, but it sure doesn't mean you can save it, because
Right.
he will put it where you can't get to it, and you can know it's coming and it doesn't do you any good. So I agree with you. I think it just needs a little bit of time, need to let it cook a little bit, and then we're really going to see some things happen. I do want to ask you about the Lightning, because I know everybody there misses Steven Stamkos. I know the fans miss him, but you all are doing all right. You're doing okay down there. Jake Gensel added to the lineup. Talk to me about what you're seeing from this Tampa Bay Lightning team post Steven Stamkos.
Yeah, I mean, I am really impressed with the moves that were made this summer, and I would be the first person, because I was really upset when Stamkos left. Just as a human being, I was like, I'm gonna really miss covering him, just miss him as a human, and so I didn't so much know what to expect, because he was the most constant person on that team. So when you take him out of the equation, kind of pull the rug out from underneath everybody, it's like, all right, what is this going to look like going into the season? But I mean, I'm really impressed with the players that they picked up, and they really did make the right moves for the team. And yeah, I mean, they got some young guys like JJ Moser, and then Connor Geekie, who is a rookie, and he scored his first goal last night, which was huge. Yes. But I mean, he had a lot of good looks before that. I knew it was coming. It was just kind of a matter of time. He's playing on the second line right now, which is just incredible. But the Lightning they have a lot that they can build on, which is great. Like, the talent is there, and there's a hole though where Stamkos was, when it comes to the power play. I don't even remember. I'll have to check their numbers, but long story short, the power play isn't looking too hot right now.
So we can relate. We're still trying to get it cooking here too.
It's low. But I'm not worried about the power play. They're going to figure that out. You can see where Stamkos was, and you can see where the guys are really confused because he's not there. Yeah. But as far as like 5-on-5 play goes, they're playing a lot better. And Jake Gensel is a really talented guy. And I don't think it's fair when people try to compare him and Stamkos. So there's nothing about them is the same. Like, nothing about them is similar. Nothing about them, their game is the same. They're very different players. And people who think that this is a replacement or anything, it's just not the case. But yeah, I mean, so far so good. I'm watching Coop kind of do his thing as a coach, which he's just the best coach, and get the guys to kind of buy in and bond with each other and build chemistry. And it's already like they already are building chemistry. It's pretty cool to watch.
Well, tonight is going to be a pretty cool game to watch. Going to be an emotional game to watch. Tonight, it's going to be on ESPN. It's going to be a national broadcast. So everybody be sure to tune in to watch that game. And maybe have some tissues. I don't know, man. I might cry. These are
Yeah,
big
no,
moments, and this is different. This is a different return.
yeah, no, it'll be emotional for sure. I think Lightning fans are still really upset over this. Even though the team is winning, and whether or not the moves that they made were right, it's still very weird not to see Stamkos there. And like I said, I'm just gonna put it in the universe that maybe he'll end up back in Tampa one day, but we'll see.
We'll see about that. We'll see about that. Diandra, thank you so much for joining me to talk about the Lightning and to talk about Steven Stamkos. Will you let our listeners know where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, so you can find me. I feel like Twitter is the best way to find me. So it's Diandra_Loux on Twitter, and I'll be at the game, so I'll be getting as much as I can.
Once again, I want to thank Diandra Loux for joining us to talk about Steven Stamkos and his return to Tampa Bay. On tomorrow's show, Emma and I will recap the game, including our one word to describe whatever we see happen. And we will talk about Stamkos' response to being back in Tampa Bay. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with that all new episode. We'll see you then.